Good evening. First of all, welcome and congratulations. We have a great deal of respect for your investment of time. We certainly don't take that lightly because I know, like most of Southern California here, there's not a shortage of things for you guys to be doing tonight, whether it's business or pleasure. So we'll make sure that we make this of value for you. I look at it as if you're kind of like walking along a river, and all of a sudden, as you walk along the river, you hear a cry for help. And you jump in the river and you save this person, you pull them to shore, you pump all the water out of their chest, you give them mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and you save their life. And just like in your business, as soon as you end one project and save one life, what do you hear?
Another cry.
Another cry for help. Probably two cries for help, right? And what do? We jump back in the river, we pull those two from the water, we bring them to the shore, we pump all the water out of their chest, give them mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, save their lives, and no sooner do we finish that, and what do we hear? Yeah, 4 more cries for help. So what tonight's about, and the thing I respect most about Sage, is that what you're doing is you're taking time out to take a look upstream, upriver, and see who the hell's pushing these people in the first place, right? It's taking time out to work on your business, to make sure that you're being more strategic, you're having systems, and you're accomplishing outcomes that you wouldn't be if you were more tactical in nature or reactive in nature. So my commitment tonight is I have 2 goals for you. First and foremost is to create as much value in the very short period of time that we have, because it's kind of hard to fit as much as we want into a 90-minute opportunity, but at the same time, I also like to have fun. So 2 goals, fun and value. Question for you. How many of you have ever, well, let me start with this. How many of you have ever had Domino's pizza before? Show of hands. Okay, hold on to that. I got to turn this on so we have a projection. There we go. I'll tell you first what we're going to focus on, but before we do, I have my favorite quote, and that is that awareness precedes understanding, and understanding precedes change. Our company is primarily a sales and marketing business growth company, and we believe that the awareness is the marketing part of the growth, and the understanding is the sales part, but obviously they go hand in hand. And tonight, the areas we're going to cover first and foremost are the 7 most common business mistakes that business owners make. You guys want to know what they are? Yes. Okay, we'll share those in just a minute. How to create...
I don't.
At least you can identify what not to do. Secondly, we're going to talk a little bit about your messaging and positioning. Third, we're going to give you what we call our strategic tip of the iceberg sales and marketing. And the reason we say strategic tip of the iceberg sales and marketing is because most people are fighting over a very small percentage of client base when there's a much bigger client base they're not going after. They're very tactical in their approach, and we're going to shift some of our thinking tonight to be more strategic in nature. Next, we also believe a lot in improving communications and culture in business. Jerry mentioned that we're a conscious business growth company. And what we mean by conscious is we think both short-term and long-term, and how it impacts the people, the planet, the profits of our organization, and also how we can benefit, the greater good, and not just, we're making meaning and not just making money. Money's okay too. Is everybody okay with that? So we'll combine both. And tonight what I thought I'd do is, rather than lecture at you, because I know most of us are pretty conditioned to that learner's trance in college, and we learned how to go through lectures. Tonight is really going to be a sharing of case studies, actual examples of clients we've worked with over the last 30 plus years, after working with now 480 different companies from all sizes. So tonight we're going to look at 4, 5, 6 different case studies and different sizes, because I know we have smaller groups, some of them are 2, 3, 4, 5 million, some are middle-sized, 20, 40 million, and some are large, 100 million and above. So we're going to give you some examples of real case studies of companies that we've worked with in the past, and how to apply what we're sharing with you so you can learn in real time and not just hypothetical or theoretical. There'd also be 2 different categories. One will be business to business, and the other will be business to consumer, because I know we have a cross-section of clients here, or customer businesses here, that do one or the other. So first of all, let's look at the biggest, most common mistake that people make. How many fall into this trap, by the way? Sir.
It's only half gone.
Now, what I mean by this is, would you say that alcohol is a stimulant or a depressant? Yeah, technically it's a depressant, but people use it as a what? Yeah, for at least to get through happy hour at the end of the day, right? We go to have happy hour to break down our inhibitions, to have a little bit of fun, to let loose. But at some point, and definitely before 4 a.m. when you leave the bar, it becomes a depressant, right? You're kind of lagging, you're kind of hungover, tired, etc. Well, the message behind this is what we're going to share with, we're going to focus on the most. The biggest challenges most companies have is they're very tactical in nature. So what do? They have a sale. They put something on sale, or they discount their prices, they give you a scholarship, they do something that is tactical and short-sightedness in nature. So tonight we're going to talk how you can shift from being tactical to strategic in nature. Our belief is that about 95% of the companies we've come across are primarily tactical organizations. Now, obviously, we have a group of people here who are very, focused and committed to their growth. So my guess is that this group is probably a little bit different in that mixture. We definitely have to have a tactical mindset, but it has to be based on strategy if you want to be successful, both short and long term. So we're going to talk mostly about becoming more strategic. Second is to stop competing for market share. Now the question that I asked you was, how many of you have tasted Domino's pizza before? My next question is, how many of you would say that Domino's pizza is the best tasting pizza you've ever had in your life? Show of hands. Okay, so we know you don't have a drinking problem here. So it's not the best tasting pizza. But then how did it go from number 19 in Yesplippity, Michigan, or whatever it was, near Detroit? It was number 19 in near Detroit in 1960 when a couple of brothers bought a little pizza joint for $500. How did they go from number 19 in Detroit to number 2 in the world? How'd they do it? Price? Service. So here's the situation. And many of us, and sorry you guys can't see over there very well, but if you look at this as the market share for a new business, in this case, let's look at the pizza industry. Let's divide it up and say each one of these slices here represents, a different business, a different pizza company somewhere in the world. And right here, let's just say this is Domino's Pizza back in 1960. And here's the key challenge here. When most people get into business, what do? They look at their competition. Now, it's a good thing that the brothers who bought the pizza store in 1960 didn't do that, because I can tell you that competing with existing businesses is the most expensive way to grow your business. So what happened is, instead of, obviously they didn't create a better recipe based on the hands that didn't go up when we said this is the best tasting pizza you've ever had, but also, who was the number one largest pizza company in the world at the time? Pizza Hut, right? So let's just say they have this big market share over here. Now, Pizza Hut at the time had a model. The model was have big in-room dining space. They had, lots of usually high traffic location, very expensive locations. It's all about location, location, location. Near very populated areas, condensed areas, which meant very expensive properties. Domino's said, we don't want to do that. What did they do instead?
They went to strip malls.
They went to strip malls where?
Rural.
Rural areas near what?
Neighborhoods.
Colleges.
Near colleges, military bases, universities, places where they knew they had, the potential for high turnover. And what they did is they didn't have to have a big dining room. They didn't have to have, a lot of space, high traffic location. What they did was they went in a rural market, small location, about the size of this room, is plenty of room for a Domino's, probably half this size. They needed a big walk-in refrigerator for their products. They had a couple parking spaces out front, cash register, a little area for waiting while people were picking up for those who came in. But what's great about it was a very inexpensive model. Low traffic, inexpensive real estate, didn't need a lot of in-room dining space, and low overhead. And what's interesting is that they started to capture a market that didn't exist before. And this is what I mean by creating a market. So our goal here is to follow the model that Domino's created, and that is to be more creative and more innovative and less competitive in nature. So they had a market here called delivery. Now what happened is after a while, they started to eat into Pizza Hut's market share. The marketing team went to the C-level suite of Pizza Hut and said, listen, we've got a problem here. The Monahan brothers here over here, they have this little pizza company. It's growing pretty fast because they're delivering. What did the C-level suite say? It's a fad. It'll go away. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Oops.
Did it? Yeah, oops. They slipped, right? Well, here's what's fun about when you're creative, and the reason we like to be creative, we call it conscious growth, because not only did Domino's benefit their own business model, they also benefited their competitors by default. So what's really exciting is originally they started to chew into Pizza Hut's market share. And after a while, as they became bigger and bigger and bigger and captured all this market share out here, Pizza Hut finally started to do what? Deliver. And even though their in-room dining market share went down, their overall revenues went up because they added a customer that didn't exist before. Not a physical customer, but the type of customer who wanted to stay home, not have to drive, they could drink, they could, whatever it was, and they could just stay home and order pizza. So the point here is, how can we become more creative? How can we become more innovative and stop competing? And yet most companies we go into, the first thing we see is, how can we discount our product? How can we undermine? And then we get into a commoditized battle. We have a client right now, it's about a $200 million education company in Kuala Lumpur. And they just had what they call an open day. Now an open day is kind of like an open house for the college. And what's interesting is the last couple open days, I've been there like 5 times in the last 6 months. And 2 of those times they had these weekend open days where all of the high school students, when they get their grades, they come to these open days to decide what college or university they're going to choose. And what happened is they've been bribing or discounting their product. They've been bribing the students to come to their college. Originally they did about having a beautiful brand new campus. Well, that lasted what, a year, 2, 3 years? Have you ever noticed when a new club, a new bar, a new restaurant goes up, everybody flocks there to check it out and see the new vibe, the new energy, the new food? What happens 1 to 3 years later? There's lots of new other choices, right? So it only lasts for a certain period of time. So what they did, after that, in 2010, they built this new university. After a while, the newness wore off, and now they had to compete again on value. And what happened is that when they had these open days, they felt like they couldn't enroll students. So because they were so tactical in nature, what they did is they gave them bursaries. Now bursaries are the equivalent of a scholarship or a discount here in the United States. And I mentioned to them, I said, giving them a discount like that or giving them a bursary is the equivalent of alcohol. It's short term. It's going to feel good for a while, but unless you become an alcoholic, and that's what the company will happen to the company, you're going to become an alcoholic and it's going to wear off, right? So it has no long-term impact. So we're working with them to change it from an open day to what we call a discovery day. So instead of coming in and discounting our products and trying to manipulate or coach or cajole them into coming to school there, what we're doing is, what we found is, sitting in on some of the counseling sessions, is that the students were confused about what to take in college, what to take in university. They had to make this life-changing decision, and here they are 16, 17, 18 years old, and they don't know what they want to do the rest of their life. So what happened was we said, why don't we make a discovery day, and they can come here and we'll spend 2 days, they can go through, we'll have 2 days, open days, and we'll call them discovery days. They can go through career placement tests. They can go through finding out what the employers are looking for, not just what they want to get out of the college. So that's what we mean by being more strategic in nature. So create and innovate. Now here's what's interesting. We talk about Pizza Hut. What is the #1 soft drink in the world? Coca-Cola, right here on the top of the ladder. Who's number 2? Pepsi. Who's number 3? Yeah, it's like who knows and who cares, right? In most and gaining fast. In most industries, in most verticals, there's room for 2 players in each market. Meaning there's the first and the second, and nobody knows who's number 3. So let's look at rental car. Who's number 1 in the world? Hertz. Who's number 2? Why?
Because they wanted to be number 2.
Because they try harder, right? They actually created a campaign that marketed a second-tier position. It actually helped them in their marketing campaign. Now here's what's interesting. Neither Hertz or Avis are 1 or 2. Who's really number 1?
Enterprise.
Enterprise. Now what's interesting is this. There's only room for 2 people on this ladder. When you open your business, if there's a lot of people on that ladder, it's going to be too expensive to compete to gain market share. So what you either want to do is create and innovate, do something different, or create a whole new ladder. And that's what Enterprise did. They came over here and they said, we're going to follow the Domino's Pizza model. We're going to do what with the cars? Pick up and delivery, right? So if something's successful in one model or one industry, take a look at it and see if you can have some application to your industry. Because they decided, same thing. They didn't have to compete for expensive airport locations. They went to rural markets, out near universities, out in the areas where there was a lot of auto shops, where people needed a rental car short term while their car was being fixed. So the same model is you can create and innovate and start a new ladder and not have to compete. The most expensive way, and hear this really loud, the most expensive way, and yet the choice that most people make, is to compete with others. Here's what I can tell you. What you fight to get, you have to fight to keep. And as long as you're fighting, it's more expensive when you're marketing, you're advertising, your sales, and it erodes your margins. Working too hard for results. Anybody in here work too hard? Just on days that end in Y, right? Monday through Friday through Sunday through Saturday. So, we are going to have enough paper here. How do we overcome that? When I mentioned that people compete, what we're going, let's look at it this way. There are 3 primary ways, and I learned this by playing on the panel of experts with Jay Abraham. Anybody heard of Jay Abraham before? Okay, I was on his panel of experts for about 5 years, traveled all over the world, teaching sales and marketing and business growth in the mid-90s. And Jay had a model called the law of optimization. So there were 3 ways you can grow your business. One is the number of customers. And the more customers you have, obviously the more business you have. The second was your average transaction value, or margins. And the third was the frequency or repurchase of your customers. So let's play a little game here. Let's say that you have 1,000 customers and the average transaction value is $1,000 and they purchase from you twice a year. What are your revenues? How much?
$2 million.
$2 million, right? Pretty easy to do. Easy math. Now, if you were to increase your efforts across the board by 10%, what would your new revenues be? If we increased across the board by 10%, what's this number? What is it?
4.
It's kind of a trick question, isn't it? If we increase our customers by 10%, how many customers do we have? 1,100, right? If we increase the average transaction value by 10%, what's the average transaction value now? Same, 1,100. And if we increase the frequency of purchase from 2 times a year, 2.2, right? What's interesting is this number now becomes so it's 2662. So you're getting a 33% increase. Now here's what's interesting. Most companies, when we go into organizations, what we see is most companies are focused on which one of these 3? Number 1. 80% of their efforts are usually going to how do I find more customers? Which one is the least expensive way to grow your business? The customers you already have. And working on your margin, working on reducing your costs and overhead, increasing your price and your packaging, upselling, cross-selling, etc. So working hard is spending all your time in one of these. The key is just like banking. Think of your business as compounded interest. So we still want to go out and get new customers, but is it a lot easier to get 10% new customers or 33% new customers? 10% is an easy model to get. 10% here is easy, 10% here is easy. So if we can compound those, just like in banking, you're going to get a 33% increase. So that's just the working smarter model. So compound growth. Next, how many of you vomit on your prospects? How many people have salespeople who vomit on your prospects? Yeah, it's like, what do you do? Right? And they just hammer them. Have you ever been to a restaurant And I don't know if you're like me, when I travel, I kind of like to taste the local flair unless I go to some place that's super hyper spicy, and then I kind of back off and just say, what do you have that's a little more temperamental? But if you go to, if you travel, don't you want to test something new and local or what that restaurant's known for? So if you ask the waiter, you say, you know, what are you known for? What are your top 3 dishes? If they answer the question, they lose. And yet, how many of us have salespeople, when they say, hey, what do? They tell you. And they start vomiting on you. They give the facts, the features, the benefits, all of the how great you are, you know, how long you've been in business. They go through that. And the reason we know this is because we've seen this happen again and again for the past 30 plus years. If a good waiter came up to you and said, you know, hi, my name is Scott, I'll be your waiter tonight. I'm curious, have you dined with us before? Now, if he says, your name is Pete, so Pete says, what are your 3 favorite dishes? Instead of answering him, what could I do?
What do you like?
I'm curious, you know, are you a vegetarian? Do you have any special dietary restrictions? Are you in a hurry? Would you like a nice leisurely dinner? Because now I can guide him to a choice that's more appropriate to his taste. And yet most of us don't do that. Most companies don't do that. So the key is this. Just like a doctor, when you go to a doctor, and let's say you have a headache or your hip hurts and you're going to the doctor, you don't go to the doctor and say, hey, what do you have on special today? What do? You tell them what's wrong. You give them the symptoms. You give them your family history. You let them diagnose. And wouldn't you prefer they diagnose the situation before they give you a prescription for treatments or drugs or surgery or what have you? And yet, isn't that changing more and more in today's environment? Doctors spend less time diagnosing and more time prescribing. And usually, and I got to be careful, Bonnie, where are you? You're in pharmaceutical sales or something, aren't you? Okay, I had to step lightly here. Who's educating the doctor? Bonnie is, right? They're getting their education, their ongoing education through the pharmaceutical companies and so forth. So they're spending less time diagnosing and more time prescribing. Next, number 5, ineffective communications. Here's the challenge. I can tell you that 90% of success in business really is effective communications. Effective communications, first of all, with yourself, to motivate and stimulate and invigorate yourself. Second is with your organization, your business, your community. And the third is with your messaging to your market. So if you look at it that way, communications makes up a great deal of your success or failure in business. So here's what's interesting, though. We're going to run out of paper here. Here's what's interesting. What do you think are the 4 most common forms of communication that are taught in school? What are they? Reading. That's number 1, actually. What's number 2? Writing. What's number 3? Speaking. What's number 4?
Acting.
Sorry, what?
Listen.
What did you say? I'm sorry?
Listening.
Oh, listening. Okay, listening. Now here's what's interesting. That's exactly the order or the amount of time that universities, colleges, and K through 12s spend time teaching us how to communicate. We spend most of our time learning how to read and being a more effective reader, better comprehension, faster reader. We spend the second most amount of time reading, third most speaking, and the least amount listening. Then we do a lot of studies and research. We want to find out what are employers looking for. And we find that one of the most important ingredients they're looking for is what? Listening. Now here's what's interesting. This is actually the percentage, studies show the percentage of with which we communicate today. We only spend 19% of our time reading, 22% writing, 26% speaking, and we pretend to listen 30% of the time. True, or is that a true story? And yet, how many of our salespeople have ever taken a class in listening skills? But yet that's one of the requirements or requests that employers are looking for most. They're looking for the ability to play on teams. They're looking for, dynamic problem solving. They're looking for listening skills. So the soft skills, not even the grades or where you went to school or how well you did in school. They're looking for the soft skills, if you will. And yet most companies downplay the soft skills, don't they? Say, oh, that's not important, and yet that's what they're looking for. Confidence in the interview, how well you communicate. So it's important that we spend some time you look up here and I said self-organization and market. The 80-20 rule is this. We should spend 80% of our time doing what? Listening, and 20% speaking. Now if you're a salesperson, it should go like this. 80% of the time I'm listening, 20% of the time I'm doing what? Asking questions, right? To find out more information. I want to identify your needs, your wants, your fears, your doubts, etc. And yet that's not usually the way it goes. But we're going to share with you how to get more effective with that with your companies. Next is compromising on talent. Here's what's interesting. When we go into organizations, they say, hey, can you train our people? Because we do sales training, we do marketing, messaging, communications, etc. Can you train our people? Now we go in, but there's a challenge. In most cases, they've done very, very little to qualify or quantify the quality of their team. And what's interesting, when we get in there, usually with sales teams, only if we put them through, we profile our people and we find out what are the skill sets, what are their attributes, what are their values. We do disc profiling, all of that material to find out how capable are they as a salesperson. And we find out just by putting them through a benchmarking process when we go into companies, we find out that most of them should never have been in sales. They should be somewhere else. So if you spend a lot of time and resources training your salespeople, and they're not salespeople, is that a good investment, yes or no? Probably not. So we want to make sure we do one thing. Hire slow, fire fast. Now it sounds cruel, right? That's not fair. But if you spend a little more time qualifying and making sure you hire the right person, you'll spend less time on the back end training, supporting, trying to get them to come to work on time, the whole bit. You'll know who's going to work virtually out in the field, who has to be inside part of a team, because you understand their attributes, their values, their mindset, etc. So we do a lot of, and then once we do that demographic, once we benchmark their current team, we have a whole platform that we created as a result of that to find out who is the best suited candidate for that position. How many of you, when you hire, you place an ad, what's the next step after you place the ad?
Screening for resumes.
Screen the resumes, right? We go through the resumes, we look through 1, 2, 3 pages. Have any of you ever found someone who wasn't truthful on their resume? Does that happen? More and more. I mean, what was it? A governor just got tossed the other day, or somebody,
Basketball coach.
Basketball coach, that's right, yeah. So he wasn't honest on his resume. Is it easy to embellish your credentials, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, it's becoming less easy. In a lot of ways it's more easy, but in a lot of ways it's less, because with the internet there's transparency. Because people can do searches and find out a lot more about you with a lot less effort. You could get away with it 30 years ago, you can't today. But that's not the point. The key is to make sure, by the way, after you go through the resumes, what do? What's the next step if you're hiring? Interview. Does anybody do anything different than that? What do? You Google them, you find out what their SEO, see if they have any drunken stupor parties, half-naked pictures on MySpace, Facebook and stuff. It's becoming popular. It's amazing how many people don't clean up their social media before they decide to look for work. Here's what's interesting. Harvard Business Review Journal said this: do not hire, do not interview, do not even look at their resume before you profile. You want to save some time? If you put out an ad for a new job and you got 50, 100, 150, put them through a profiling that finds out how well they're suited for that position before you, your manager, your HR department, invest all that time in finding out if they're a good candidate or not. So, yes, sir?
Is there a point where so if you're hiring lower level people though, that you don't want to put them through that? Maybe are you talking more specific to managerial position, or?
Well, we focus primarily on business growth, so we actually created a platform just for salespeople. We also do marketing, admin, and others because we want to see if they have the right profile for them fitting in that position. But yes, we do put all people through the profiling system. And it's not that expensive. If you have a master license, it costs you no more to do 50 than it does 500. So by the way, the other thing it helps you with, Glenn, is that you want to make sure that you know how to communicate with them. You know how to onboard them. You know how to train them. You know how to support them. So those are all great things to know. If you know their values aren't in alignment with the company values, you're going to find that out before you even interview them. So we have actually created a platform, and what it does is by a press of a button, once they take the assessment, it flashes up a number. 60, 70, 80, what have you. You say, I'm only going to interview people 70 above because this is an external sales position. I want them to be very good as an individual, virtually out there on their own. I want them to be, bottom line driven, very confident. So you know the criteria and you can change those filters. Once you get those 100 people who filled out the assessment and applied for the job, all we do is say, I want anybody who's 70 above, and you now take that 100 people, you narrow it right down to the top 20 candidates. Then from there, you take a snapshot and it gives you the top 6 pages of their assessment based on the position you're looking for. And it tells you what they're good at, how well they're good at closing, handling rejection, networking, etc. And then from there, you can either look at their whole 70-page profile, or you can decide they qualify to come in for an interview. Now, the reason for doing it saves time and it gives you a better quality candidate. Is it 100%? No, it's about 80. But it does save you time, save you energy, and it gets you better candidates. So make sure that you are slow to hire, get the right candidates, because many of us end up getting the wrong candidates, and then you're in a situation where, by the way, does anybody know what it costs? Let's say you have a $100,000 salesperson. They have a base salary of $100,000 plus potential for commission. Do you know how much it costs you for turnover when you lose that person and have to replace them? It says double, 50%, what else? 5 times. If you look at Brad Smart, who wrote the book Top Grading, he says it actually is 6 to 7 times their base salary. You have a $100,000 high hitter, high and above employee, it could cost you $600,000 or $700,000 to replace them. Not to mention the cost of damaged reputation, lost business, and other costs. That's why it's so important to spend time making sure you have the right candidate here. So number 6, the most common business mistakes is compromising on talent, not properly profiling them. Now, by the way, I forgot to ask, do I have permission to play with you guys a little bit tonight? Have a little bit of fun? I'm not speaking down to these people, but the truth is, just like our wives do to us, hi honey, our spouses tend to like to train us, right? It's no different in, if you look at, SeaWorld, which is right down the road. The truth is that we want to train our people to perform the level we want. How do you do that? Through conditioning, through reinforcement, through integration, and through appreciation. You hear us talk a lot about corporate culture. Tom Peters says culture eats strategy for breakfast. No matter how important strategy is, you can't overlay or take a blueprint of a good culture and overlay it on a bad culture. It just doesn't happen. You've heard the term, the fish rots from the head first. When we go into organizations, first thing we look at, and the only person we deal with, it is who? The CEO. We look at who's leading the charge. And I can tell you, if you take a look at them, it's almost like, like Brad Smart says, an A player hires people who are like them, right? Or anybody hires people who are like them. What happens if you have a C-level manager and they're in charge of hiring their team? They're hiring D and F candidates, right? So we're going to be careful who we're hiring, but the key is to make sure we condition, reinforce, integrate, and appreciate. This is missing in most upper-level management. You guys want to improve the culture in your organization? There's 3 things that you can do to reinforce them. Just like you're training a dolphin. If you go to SeaWorld, for example, every time when they first get a new dolphin in, every time they jump, what do they give them? Yeah, they give them a sardine, a fish, something to feed them to reward them for the behavior that you want to see repeated. So we give them a fish. Now, if you just keep giving them a fish every single time they jump, what happens after a while?
They don't jump.
They only jump when they want to, right? They only jump when they're hungry, or they don't jump so high. So the first type of reinforcement is what we call consistent reinforcement. And what that means is that every time they jump, you give them a fish. It's kind of like every time they come to work, you give them a paycheck. All right? That's consistent reinforcement. They have a place to sit. That's consistent reinforcement. After a while, that gets old. The newness wears off. That enthusiastic beginner stage goes away, and they become that disillusioned learner and then the reluctant contributor. So what we want to do is go to what we call variable reinforcement. So what you do is you give them a fish the first time they jump. Second time, just kidding. Third time, 5th time, 7th time, 2nd time, 4th time. You keep them guessing, meaning you reinforce them. Now, what I mean by reinforcement, it doesn't mean give them a fish. For an employee, we talk about appreciation. We talk about recognition. We talk about, especially if it's public. So when they do something, you want to make sure you recognize. You don't just expect that they're going to do that. The key is to reinforce the behavior you want to see repeated. The challenge with most leaders is they wait to catch their people doing something wrong. And then they point it out. And then all we do, it's like your kids, go clean up your room, go clean up your room. They finally clean up your room and you don't even notice it. All right, so make sure you reinforce the behavior you want to see repeated. So those are the 7 most common mistakes. I'm going to speed up here just a little bit because I want to make sure we get through this in 90 minutes. So next, these are some important steps to create your positioning and your messaging. First of all, the goal here is to establish credibility. Now, credibility is the combination of 2 things: trust and knowledge. Now, knowledge is real important because it's what most of us are missing right now. Not that you're not intelligent, it just means that we're not using it to educate our clients. So we're going to talk a lot tonight about education-based marketing, education-based selling. Trust is very important. Jim and I have a friend, Stephen M.R. Covey, who wrote a book called The Speed of Trust, right? When you have trust, the speed of business goes what? Up, right? If you don't have trust, speed goes down. If you have trust, the cost of doing business goes down. If you don't have trust, the cost of business goes up. It has to happen. Meaning that if you have rapport, if you have trust in, if your prospects, your clients, your employees trust you, you're going to get things done faster for less money. Look at Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett walks up and says, I want to buy your company. They agree in terms, handshake, 30 days later, what do they have? A done deal. Any other person? 2 years of due diligence, teams of lawyers fighting it out, arguing over every little scrap left on the table because there's no trust there. So if you haven't read the book, by the way, it's a very valuable book for business leaders called The Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey. How did we get all the way back to the beginning? Yeah, that's never happened before. Next is to create an appetite through education. Here's the challenge: is most salespeople fail to create the appetite. What they do is they come right out and say, here's what we do, and they put it right out in front of you. So what we want to do is create an appetite, and the way we do that is not to sell, but to enroll. We have a new book coming out. It's called Enrolled, Not Sold. We want people to be enrolled, buying for their reasons, not where we're trying to force them, not where we're trying to push stuff on them. So we're going to create appetite through education. The other way you can do it is through what we call wow statements. When you're looking through a newspaper, a magazine, what causes you to stop and want to read more? The headline, right? How much time do you have for a reader or for an audience to see that headline to decide whether they're going to read more?
3 seconds.
3.2 seconds, right? Not very much time. It's got to be a compelling head. It's got to be a wow statement that says, I want to know more. And by the way, it helps if you use market data research or trends because you're educating them on what's happening in the market. Next is to provide preventative tips or steps. Meaning that not just are you selling them, but you're giving them value for free. Online, isn't that the trend today? We're moving to giving away value, giving away information, which we used to sell and make a lot of money on. But now we're giving it away, we're giving tips to endear themselves, induce reciprocity, position ourselves as experts. Next, we want to preempt objections and competition. Here's a great tool. Become a mind reader. Become a mind reader. Think about what is it my customer is going to think? What are they going to say? How can I position myself or my reading to control the mind of that consumer? Now, when I say preempt the objections, what we do is we literally give them a set of questions. For example, we have a contractor, a single contractor in Florida. And in their materials, we have them say, there's a lot of competition for single contractors in Florida. They have Sinkhole Alley there, right? So we had them actually create a list. Say, when you're considering a contractor, make sure you ask these questions. Now, by asking those questions, we already know that if they go to our competitor, if they get on the phone with another salesperson, they can't measure up based on the questions we're having them ask. But our clients will measure up well against those questions, and I'll show you an actual example of that in just a minute. Frame your solution why. That's all people care about. You've heard the, people buy for emotion, they justify with logic. We want to make sure that the why is framed properly. Tip of the iceberg selling. Here is people who are looking for your product. Meaning that they're either buying now or they're open to buying. The challenge is that most of your competitors are vying for these same eyeballs. Would you agree? Someone's already said this. I'm going to buy furniture. I'm going to, buy pharmaceutical. I'm going to buy, lighting for my home, furniture, drapes, whatever it is. There's 3% of the population who's looking to buy now. There's 7% that's open to it, and 90% of the people in that market are competing for that 10%. It's the most expensive way to grow your business, is to compete for that 10%. We would challenge you to do this. Look below the water surface here and look at this 30% right here who aren't even thinking about buying right now. But if you educated them, if you wounded them, if you got them to understand the value of not having it, then they're going to be more open to it. The next group is they think they're not interested. The reason they think they're not interested is because no one's educated them. The last group is someone who's definitely not interested. Now, we don't spend much time with these people because you just have to say next and move on. But there's 60% below the waterline that has very little or no competition, and they're open to being educated. And if you're the one who introduced them and you're the one who educated them, you're positioned as the expert, you're more likely going to be the candidate who they go to when they're ready to buy, whether it's now or later on. So there's more opportunity and less competition below the waterline. So the biggest strategic objective is to be seen as an expert. What we're sharing here is market data. Market research is way more important than product data. We have a company that's a $400 million company, and I won't say in what city because you'll probably get an idea who they are. The challenge is their brochures. By the way, how many of you use brochures to sell as a tool? How many of you have salespeople who come to you and say, I could really sell if I just had a brochure? If anybody ever does that, just say you're fired. Because the brochure doesn't sell, does it? But the challenge is this, is that most brochures don't sell because they're usually technical data, they're usually ego pieces, they're how great we are, here's what we do, here's how long we've been in business, here's all the awards we've won. They're usually ego-based pieces. So we want to shift away your marketing from the ego about us. We want to shift from me, I, us, we to you, your, and your clients. So you must know more about your entire market. Forget about your product for just a minute. Instead of educating on why you're so great or how your product works or how it's going to solve their problems, show them the trends that says if you take this decision now, if you make this decision, the trends are going to show this. For example, got off the phone today, or actually last night, with my clients in Malaysia. And instead of saying, we have the best hospitality school, we have the best business school, we actually used education in there like, what are the trends or how many jobs are going to be available in these markets? What are employers looking for, etc. So know the market and spend more time on that than you are on your product. This strategy causes you to be perceived as an expert in your field. People, by the way, we've heard the saying before, probably, people will pay more for an expert than they will for a salesperson. They don't want to be sold, they want to be making sure they're making the right decision. Now, here's the important part, is baking the cake. You can have all the greatest ingredients in the world. You can have the best product, you can have the best service, you can have the best talent, the best logo, the best website. The key is to weave it all into a story that gets the outcome that you're looking for. Even if you have all those great ingredients for a cake, would you agree that if you don't put them in the right syntax or the right order, you might have a different outcome, yes or no? It's very possible. So what we want to do, our goal is to weave this data into a story that creates and anticipates an appetite or gets them to salivate for your product even before they know what it is you're selling. Now I'm telling you what we're going to do, and then I'm going to share with you exactly how we've done this. It also helps to preempt the competition, which we've covered. Nice picture, bless you. How many of you have ever seen a mouse before? You like mice? No. Now this happens to be a rat, so this is a little bigger than that. But if you see a mouse out in your garage, what are your thoughts?
Kill it.
Kill it. Now it's a guy thing, right? We want to kill everything, including the competition. Now that's why I hope you have a woman on your board, yes? Yeah, you want to have females on your advisory board so the guys don't go out and kill everything. So when you see a mouse, what are your thoughts? What do you think? Are you concerned? Are you freaking out? Most aren't. They're thinking, he won't eat much. Would you agree that an undisturbed prospect will not buy? We had a client came to us about 5-6 years ago, about $850, $900 million company, or $850, $900,000 company. Very small, smallest company I'd worked with in a long time. She sold her house to pay for our fees. Why? She was a startup company. She wanted to take her product to the masses. She'd been in business for a few years and she hadn't broken the $1 million mark yet. She had an EPA approved rodent repellent that was natural, that was green, it was safe for the environment, safe for pets, safe for kids, but she couldn't get it to market. She was struggling to get any traction. Because she was going to retail outlets, she was trying to find places to sell it. You know, how do we sell it? So, first of all, you want to create desire through education. So what we did is we provide a little contrast. If you had watched the evening news tonight before you came here and someone said, I have a rodent repellent, it's all natural, and in that news piece they said, did you know that mice and rats carry 35 known diseases? One is an often fatal disease called hantavirus and it can kill you. Did you know that if you see that little mouse over there, that's just one mouse, but how many are behind the wall? If you see one, there's probably more. Now, what happens too is you educate them, say in the fall, in most places, especially out in farm country, in in Canada, Jerry, where are you? Where they come in the winter, they want to stay warm. They're looking for food, fuel, shelter, etc. They come in the winter times or in the fall to protect themselves in the winter. But did you know that there are 1.6 million house fires every year? 8% of which are suspected to be caused by mice and rats chewing through the electrical wiring because they perceive it as fuel or food. The petroleum in the wires is what they're chewing. So when you store your RV, when you store your jet ski, when your electrical wiring in your house, they're chewing it up. So what we do is we start to create desire pain. Now we haven't even talked about what she does yet, but let's say you saw that. And you think, well, a couple mice, no big deal. But did you know that a single pair of mice can be responsible for up to 15,000 offspring in a single year? When do you want to deal with the issue?
For the babies.
Early, right? So what we're doing is we're creating contrast. We're wounding them because an undisturbed prospect will not buy. If you don't, it's just a mouse, it's just in the garage, they're not going to bother us too much. We create contrast, then provide value, then preempt, and I'll show you how we do that. Next is to develop a strategic optimization plan. What we did with her was this. By the way, how many of you are under $5 million in size, just revenue size? Okay. Sometimes we don't always have the sales team, the resources. She didn't. She didn't have one salesperson on staff. She was trying to get into organizations, so we got her approved as a vendor through True Value, Ace Hardware, Do It Best, John Deere, some of the farm and tractor companies, etc. And the way we did that was we just hired a telemarketing company. Now, if you're not doing this, it's a very inexpensive strategy to take on. It's a very leveraged approach to get your business done. We went to the, by phone, found a company in North Dakota. Very inexpensive because the cost of living is very low. We wouldn't use somebody here in San Diego. So we go to North Dakota. We pay them $28 an hour to be on the phone to sell for us. We get to train them for free. They don't charge us for training. We write the scripts. Since then, I can tell you we've used them 3 or 4 or 5 times since. They say they love working for us because they love our scripts because they work so well. Why? Because we use education-based marketing and strategic selling principles for getting it done. So what happened was we got them approved for using the drugstores, etc. I'm sorry, hardware stores. But yet, individual hardware stores are independently owned and operated in most cases. So they're either, somebody owns 4 or 5 of them, or a mom and pop owns a single one. So even though the product is approved, you still have to enroll the distributor. So if you have a distributor, if you have a licensee, a franchisee, you still have to enroll them in wanting to purchase your product. So we got on the phone, and we didn't say, hey, I was just calling, which is what most salespeople do, right? They call up and say, hi, how are you today? You know it's a salesperson. And then they say, I was just calling to see if you might be interested in, click. What if you called and said, hi, this is Scott with EarthKind. Are you familiar with our company? Now, regardless if they say yes or no, you say, well, great, this is going to be a quick call then. Does that take away some of the energy in that call? We know we're not going to waste our time. So the intro and capturing their attention early is great. We trained them how to do that. They went into a presentation. We sent them a free sample of the product, and we said, we're going to follow up with you in 2 weeks. Didn't sell anything. We're just going to send you a sample, check it out. We'll send you a sample of 4, 5, 6 boxes, give it to your relatives, check it out. We call back in 2 weeks. When we call back, we asked them about it, if they had a chance to use it, put it to use, etc. And by the way, while I'm on the phone with them, I send them a link with all they have to do is press on the link, and it automatically sends them a starter package that we arranged with the distribution warehouse to send them to get them started using on the product. Have you ever heard of commitment and consistency? Once they have it in the store, once we start driving business to them, and we also put them on our store locator on the website. So you type in your area code, your zip code, and your store now shows up as carrying that product. So we help them become wealthy. You want to know the quickest way to wealth? Assist others in becoming wealthy. Quickest way to wealth is to assist others. So we had an optimization plan. We did a retail marketing campaign. The next is we expanded her potential client base, distribution base. The first was B2C for the most part, through retail. Second was B2B. She had no other ways of getting business. So we just said, who else is what we call a host beneficiary or host parasite relationship for them? And we said, well, listen, there's exterminators out there, right? We did some research and we found that 22% of all homeowners who hire an exterminator have problems for mice and rats. So what we did was this. She was getting ready to go to a big trade show. She was going to spend tens of thousands of dollars for an expensive trade show in Las Vegas. How many of you have been to those? Yeah, and usually what happens is you go there and you work your tail off and you get all these unqualified leads, and next year when you open up the duffel bag to take out the trade show booth, those leads are still in the duffel bag, right? You've played that game. It's an expensive lesson. We said, don't go that route. Tell you what, why don't you find the top 50 exterminators in the country, top 50, and find the top 3 educators in the industry, bloggers, experts, people who they listen to, they write for magazines, Huffington Post, whoever, and invite them to a sponsored breakfast on the day before or the day of, it starts that night. Invite them to a breakfast, come in early, and you're going to take them to a place at the Venetian. And I went on my, because I was living in Las Vegas, our company's based in Las Vegas, we also have a home here, but I went to the event, and what we did is we took those exterminators and we did a lesson for them. We taught them how to grow their business. Just like we showed you the 3 ways to grow your business, we showed them how to get more customers. We showed them how to increase the margin of the transaction value. We showed them how to get more frequency. And the way we did that was to introduce them to the product. And in fact, the actual flyer that we sent out is supposed to be right here. Here are the facts. Earn more profits from existing clients and attract new ones by giving them what they want. Now, if you're a business owner and you see that, would that kind of get your attention? Next, here are the facts. 76% of adults prefer to eliminate pest problems with green solutions. Instead of just saying, hey, I've got a green product, let them know who their audience is. Let them know who their prospects are. Next, 64% interviewed said they will pay more and seek out products or services that are eco-friendly. Next, 82% want the products they use around the house to be safe for the environment. And then we showed them how to do this. We said, you're already going to the home. You're already sending a salesperson out there to spray around the perimeters. While you're there, why don't you, if they have rodent problems, or if you see a sign of dropping somewhere, or you ask them if they'd like to protect their home against rodents, what if you just took their credit card and did an automatic drop ship? Now let me tell you about the product. This woman was a perfumologist. She went to school and studied fragrances and scents and so forth. And she got into an elevator one time, and have you ever got into an elevator where someone has gotten off the elevator and they have this massive perfume on, whether it's men's cologne or women's perfume? And you can still smell them long after they're gone. They aren't there, but their perfume is still holding court, right? She thought about that and she goes, God, I can't stand being in this confined space. Well, she was on the farm one day, and she was in her truck, and she was pull starting another truck who had a clutch, right? And she's wearing these cut-off shorts, and she's getting ready to hit the gas so that she can jump start the other truck. All of a sudden, a mouse comes running up her leg. She freaks out, pops the clutch, and pulls the bumper off the car behind her, right? Now, she said, I'm not going to live like this. I'm going to be on the farm. I want it to be safe. I don't want to deal with mice. I don't want to deal with rats. But I have children. I have pets. I like the environment. I don't want to poison them. So what she did was she invented, through using her perfumes, to find out what repelled mice and rats. And she discovered that there's something called balsam fir oil. She takes old corn cob chips, dried up, chips them up like a potpourri bag, puts in balsam fir oil, scents it with citrus oil, and it smells like a Christmas tree scent. Now what happened is she puts them around the house where mice might come in, or rats, whether it's in the attic or in the garage or behind the refrigerator, places where they're more likely to congregate. And what happens is when the mice and rats come near it, the balsam fir causes their smell, their sinuses to swell up and they can't smell. How do mice see? Through their nose. If they're in the attic, there's no lights on, right? So they have the sense of smell, and that's how they see. So all of a sudden, they're in a fight or flight situation. Their sense of smell is taken away, and they can no longer see. So it'll prevent them from coming in to your house, your space, your barn. Put them in your RV when you store it for the winter, and your wires aren't shoot out when you take it out in the spring. So that's how she used it. Now, she... hold on here. We're going to show you something that's kind of fun. I mentioned the quickest way is to assist others. I'm going to play something for you because what we did for her was to create a brochure. Actually, we created an entire campaign. But in this brochure, it had all of the information, the challenges with mice and rats and how they're... oh, here it is. The reason I want you to see this, because you're going to see this here in just a moment. It educates the client on all the challenges and perils of mice and rats. Next, it tells you about, it preempts the competition. Because you can kill mice and rats by going to the hardware store or the drugstore and getting rodenticides, mouse traps, glue boards, ultrasonic equipment, etc. But they all have negative effects. All right? First of all, it's cruel and unusual punishment for the mice and rats if that's important to you. It gets into, I don't know, does anybody know how rodenticides work?
Yeah, they bleed out.
Dehydrates.
Yeah, they bleed out, right? They literally internal bleeding and it takes days for that to happen. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know if I want my children or my pets around a product that if they ingest it, and they found this on playgrounds where exterminators have put these big rat pellets around schools and children because it's sweet, it tastes like candy. Kids put it in their mouth and they eat it. Dogs, pets, eat it. And even if it was just the mice and rats, if they eat it and they go out and sickly and they're wandering around, guess who swoops in and eats them? Yeah, birds of prey. And now it's in the ecosystem and it's in the environment, right? So she was an environmentalist. She didn't want to make sure. So we tell them what we're doing here is not making anybody else wrong, but what we're doing is preempting the competition. Once you get your product or you get your client salivating for your product, you don't want them to go run to the competition. So what you want to do is preempt the competition and make sure that they're going to be hungry for your product. Now we haven't even started talking here about her product yet, but eventually we come back to what it is here in the back. Now, what we did with, her name is Carrie Warburg. Carrie came to me for a couple days in Las Vegas. We put her through some platform training, through some media training, through some speech and vignettes and stories and metaphors, and so she could communicate with media. And we put her on 20 different radio shows all around the United States. We set it up so that she would get on there. And how much does it cost to be on a talk show, by the way? Zero. I mean, you can hire someone to help you get on the show, but once you're on the show, DJs and stations and producers are looking for good content all the time. So all we do is we send a list of questions to the DJs ahead of time. So we frame them on what questions we want to ask. We set Carrie up with the answers to those questions, so she's got great vignettes and great little sound bites. Because you can't tell a story this long on the radio or TV, can you? It gets cut down to this. So those quick sound bites have to get across. I'm going to share with you what happened. We put her on 20 radio shows, and we literally blew up her servers. And what happened was, let's see. Is after the radio shows, I can tell you that TV producers listen to radio shows to find great content. So what happened was a producer heard this spot, and I'm just going to play it for you. And as you see this, look for the brochure, because the brochure turns in this piece. Because Fox News picked up the story, all the information was right in here to educate their clients, or their listeners, if you will. And so all they did is took this, read it, and the person doing the spot said, "I got all the information I need." They went in and did the whole piece, didn't even have to do a lot of interviewing. There was no time involved. Just took this one piece and did this little piece right here.
This is Fox at 5. Besides the cold weather, another pest may be trying to move indoors. A green way to keep rodents out of your home.
Coming to you in high definition, this is Fox at 5.
Also coming up, the North Pole with no ice, details behind a new report. A local woman invents a way to keep rodents out of your home this fall without chemicals or traps. We're going to show you how it works. And on Fox at 5:30. All right, well, if you double the population of the Twin Cities, that is how many rodents will be moving inside in the next 2 weeks. Yeah, disgusting to think about, but it's roughly 1.3 million of them, and it's a disturbing statistic. But Fox 9's Dawn Stevens shows us a new, greener way to fight that problem.
They say necessity is the mother of invention.
Carrie Block had a horrifying experience years ago in visiting a farm.
And all of a sudden, out of the floorboard, a mouse ran up my bare leg. It freaked me out.
Knowing that rodents carry 35 known diseases and bite 3,000 people every year, she used her aromatherapy and perfume background to make a difference.
Over the next several years, I researched rodents to find a safe and natural way to keep them out of my property without having to kill them and dispose of their dead bodies.
No poisons or chemicals to get into the watershed or hurt pets or kids. It's called Fresh Cab Mouse Patch, and it's made of corn cobs and all natural oils of balsam fir. You place the pouches in areas you know mice tend to gather. A pantry, attic, near cracks in the house. It works up to 100 days by attacking a rodent's sense of smell.
Now imagine if your eyesight was suddenly taken away, how terrified and how exposed you'd feel. That's exactly what happens to a rodent when they enter an area treated with the Fresh Cab Mouse Pouch.
It's the only indoor plant-based EPA-registered rodent repellent in the world, which means it's been proven to be highly effective. The Nicollet Ace hardware store owner is a believer.
So they'll go somewhere else to nest because it's their main objective. So they won't, nest in your camper or eat your wires or do all the damage that they can do through the winter.
Just one pair of mice can produce 15,000 offspring every year. So now is the time to send them running from your home.
What can happen is the rodent then can run over to the neighbor's house.
All right, real quickly, I'm going to jump to next client. Highly competitive industry, $20 million company in Florida. Sinkholes were, by the way, this was a time when the economy was changing. They were changing the legislation. They'd been in business for 20 years, but there was new insurance companies were trying to get the legislation to get rid of the insurance policies or having the insurance companies to cover sinkhole damage. Now, you've seen a lot of stories how, homes get swallowed up by sinkholes and so forth. As soon as you notice a crack, you call your insurance company, they send out an adjuster, they pump the ground full of grout, in essence, to give you a solid base under your house. Very expensive. The average sale is about $80,000. This company had plateaued, had kind of leveled off. Even though they were a great company, there was a lot of competition. Contractors got out of building homes, said the home market crashed. They got into the grout business or into the sinkhole business. So here's what we did. We said, listen, nobody's guaranteeing or giving a warranty. If they were, it was by the own company. Now that company could go out of business. You have nothing to fall back on. So what we did is we went to Lloyd's of London and we had them underwrite an insurance policy because it was a brand name, so everybody knew Lloyd's of London, and it was a third-party insurance company they knew had credibility. So then we created a script, and we've got copies of it here, but it created a script for the salespeople to go out and talk about the warranty and how it's safe and how the insurance policy is going to last longer than the company, or will be there if the company is gone. The bottom line result, 40% increase with the next year. Year over year, they had a 40% increase just by educating their customers. So what happens with sinkholes, I'm not sure if it's sandstone, limestone down here, the holes in here is the rainwater and the freezing erodes the limestone, and then the sand and the dirt comes down and falls into those holes, and therefore it loosens the foundation of your house, or in some cases, your whole house. Next. Sports marketing company in Asia. This is also how I got my current client, because we worked with a sports marketing company in Kuala Lumpur. They had taken the the WWE wrestling to Asia, and it was their claim to fame. They actually made a company of about $70 million in revenue during that time. They had a 5-year contract. it expired. So they brought us in to find out how we could increase their business. For the last 2 years, they've been trying to get their top clients. The challenge is that they hadn't achieved that goal. So we'll give you a quick strategy. We call it a Dream 100 strategy. We said, give us the top 100 companies, and we're going to test the first 30. And what we're going to do is something we call a carpet bombing. It's a letter campaign. It's very simple in nature. We also did it with the sinkhole company. For example, with the sinkhole company, we put this in an envelope. We put a little lifesaver on here. And we say, finding the answer to your sinkhole problem could be a lifesaver. And then in the back it says, your free special report with answers to your sinkhole problems could be a lifesaver. And then the phone number and the warranty is right here. Now what happens is, the way this works is that it's something unique, it's something different. The next time you see a card with a dice on it, a die, and it says, why risk your home and finances on a roll of a dice? So what we're doing is make sure they choose the right contractor, and we educate them. The way this works is obviously it's unique and it's different and people notice it. Next, frequency. The reason we call it carpet bombing, it's not designed necessarily to get people just to call in. Now our people call out and they're already familiar with our name, our brand, and our situation because we've been communicating with them. With this company, or with this sports marketing company, we wanted to get through the clutter. We wanted to reach the Chief Marketing Officer or the Chief Executive Officer, and we designed a letter that was directed specifically to them. An example of the letter, and I'll just give you the headline of the report. It says, drive up your ROI with quote unquote, the 5 most important marketing and branding insights that are dramatically changing the landscape of business in Asia today. A free special report that you must call right away to receive. It goes on and gives you a couple bullets as to why that's important or why it's valuable. Now here's what's interesting. We do this not to get people to call in, but to get them familiar with the organization. Week number 1, just for calling for the free special report. Here's some, I'll go past the letter because I just wrote it to you. Week number 1, results. Now keep in mind, they hadn't been able to get any of the top 100 clients for the past 2 years. Week number 1, the Chief Marketing Officer for Hyundai Motors called them to get this free special report. Now who wrote the free special report? I did. We wrote it for them. We did the market research. We found out what are the challenges, what are the opportunities. We talk about associative conditioning and how if you associate sports to feel good, to their product, etc. Over the next 5 weeks, Lexus called them, Singtel called them, Pacific Asian Brewing Company called them, Prudential, Dutch Lady, Resorts World Gaming, Samsung, Manulife, and Coca-Cola. And within 90 days, they had already booked $750,000 in business just from this one campaign, which cost them less than $500 to mail out. So the key is, again, through education, not through selling and enrolling, but through education, you can... how many people would be really scared if I said anything about a strip club? My wife? I'm going to share this story just because this was the toughest client I ever had. 2010, a client came to me and said, look, expendable income is way down. People aren't coming to our clubs. Now this was a public company. They own 20 strip clubs, adult entertainment. And I said, listen, that's not really something I'm interested in. And he goes, I bet you can't help us. I was hooked. And I said, I bet you I can. So what we did was this. We wanted to find out, why do people go to strip clubs? What are the benefits? And it was the toughest client that I ever had. It was, they own, market research.
A lot of drinking too.
Here's what's interesting is that we actually do an audit of the company. You know, we do like a 4 to 6 week audit, find out everything about them, their competition, their product or service. So when they're in St. Louis and Denver and some other clubs, we did all day research. We did all day interviews with employees of not the clubs, but the corporate thing. And that night he says, we're going to dinner at 8 o'clock. After dinner, we're going to go to all 5 of our clubs in St. Louis. I got home at 3:30 in the morning and I had to be on stage at 8 o'clock the next morning. So yeah, market research. So this was a tough client opportunity. It was also a tough economy. You know, expendable income in 2010 was way down. People weren't going. What we did was we changed the paradigm for this entire industry by changing the way people think about or represent these clubs. One of the things we did is first of all, we did the same thing with the president of the company. We gave him media and platform training. We put him on the shows in his market, but we gave him a different message. We gave the producers of the radio shows the message saying that strip clubs were healthy. We even created a link that said healthystripclubs.com. Now, if you go to healthystripclubs.com, you could download a free special report, and I just checked it last night, and they finally, after 4 years, have taken it down. But healthystripclubs.com, you get a free special report showing you all the benefits. The fact that we're under more stress, there's cortisol pumping through our veins. You know, men have low testosterone, and as a result of that, they have a higher risk for disease in their body. You know, we painted that whole picture. Here's what happened. We also did the same thing for women in relationships, and how, you know, the whole excitement starts way before you ever get to the bedroom. You want to get the stimulation of the oxytocin, et cetera, et cetera. So we educated them on why people go to strip clubs. And I was going to play the radio thing, but I don't have time for it. The message was this. The DJs would go, are you mean to tell me that if I go to a strip club, I'm actually going to be healthier than going to the gym? Then we taught them how to laugh. We had him giggle and said, yeah, I know, we thought the same thing. We thought it was kind of interesting, but we hired this market research firm to find out, why do people go to strip clubs? And in today's environment, people are overworked, they're under stress, they have cortisol, they're dying faster because they don't have any social interaction. And we found that by being around a variety of beautiful women, for example, for men, it increases naturally, saliva tests prove it, it naturally increases their testosterone. So that was the reason for going. Also, we created another strategy. We added not dances in the strip clubs, but we had massage therapists. So it actually became from a $0 to a $50,000 a month nut for them. Because all they did is have women come around and say, okay, would you like a massage? I can do 3 songs, it's $10 a song. The song is how long? 3 minutes. How do you know that?
I don't know.
You're just guessing. So for 3 minutes, they give you a massage, and at the end of 3 songs, you spent $30. They went from 0 to 50,000 almost overnight just by adding physical touch, which is oxytocin, which causes them to feel good, de-stress, etc. So we're taking all the therapeutic and adding it to that message. So that's what TLCs are called. The results, not only did they make $50,000 more a month than each of the clubs, but what happened was their biggest competitor, who also owned 20 clubs, that year in 2010, they lost 30% of their value. They were off 30% from the previous year. Our client was up 6% as a result of using education-based marketing only. Okay?
Did anybody go to jail?
No. What do you do at strip clubs, sir? This is a company, and I was show you when we talk about optimization. This is a $250,000 education company out of Salt Lake. What we did for them was take education-based marketing and we applied it to all of their profit drivers. Now we look at compounding. If you have a $250 million company, the first place we applied it to was their advertising. So when you see a television spot, a radio spot, any direct mail pieces, did you know that a person with a 4-year college degree outlives someone with a high school diploma on average? They live 7 years longer.
Wow.
It's incredible. See, now what did you say?
Wow.
Wow statements. We want wow statements to get their attention. Now somebody's going to pay attention. If they're thinking about getting their degree or they're dissatisfied with their current career, they know that if they get that education, they're going to live 7 years longer on average. We also talk about the earning capacity, all the other benefits of getting a 4-year degree. We also took their call center. They had a call center of 105 people in one location, about 80 in another, and we trained them. They had a script. For 20 years, they've been working on the same script. They got it to just about a 40.5% conversion rate. Now, all we did was take that same script and embed 3 education, market data, research points in there. Like, on average, someone lives 7 years longer, the income stats, etc. So we added just 3 of those, and we took their conversion rate, which had been stagnant for many years, from just over 40% to 46%. Now, first thing you do is you test it. You test it with your top salespeople. So we took 3 people, tested with them, it worked. We then let it out to the other 105 in that inbound market center and got to 46%. So notice something. When we look at so you got your advertising for new customers. So we increased that 6 points, which is really, depending on it, it's more like 8 or 10%. But we increased that 6 points. Then what we did is that while they're on the phone, we did a tie down. At the end they said, okay, they tried to convince these people to come in for a counseling session with one of their counselors for the education. And what happened was they had a lot of people not show up. So all we did is do a tie down. We said, listen, we only have, this is exclusive space. We only have so many counselors. I'm going to pick out the best counselor for you because it sounds like you'd really like to get your education. And then we say, if you have a favorite restaurant? Well, just like when you go to your favorite restaurant, if you make a reservation, if you can't make it, would you do us the professional courtesy? If an emergency comes up and you can't make it, now notice I didn't say if you don't feel like it. We make it sound like it's really a big deal. If an emergency comes up and you can't make it, then please let us know. So what happened was their show rate improved by 3 points. Then what happened was their counselor conversions. We train their counselors. So when they come to the room, they have 45 to 90 minute session with the counselors. From different locations, they had anywhere from a 37 to a 39% conversion, depending on which one of the 12 campuses. We took them from 37 all the way up to 46 to 49% conversion rate. So imagine another 12 points on your conversion rate. And then kind of a benefit at the end was that these people who went through this process, who understood the benefit of their education, stayed in school longer. So retention went up. So that's what we mean by compounded interest. Your advertising improves, your conversion improves, your appointment show improves, your actual face-to-face counseling session improves, and your retention improves. So a couple other very quick success steps. Number one, make it easy to do business with you. So many times people have a marketing piece that points to a website that's full of opportunities. There's something that's very important. It's called one decision marketing. When you send out a marketing piece, drive it to a landing page. On that landing page, have one decision to make. Don't give them 3 different options or 3 different opportunities. Make it easy to do business with you. Most times when we go into companies, most companies make it so difficult for the client or the customer to get there. Anticipate and become a mind reader. We already talked a little bit about that, but think about what's most important to your client or your customer. Next, take away the client's risk. Do some kind of risk reversal. The warranty was risk reversal for the sinkhole company. Dallas and I, my wife and our team used to do public seminars as well about 5 or 6 years ago for entrepreneurs and small business owners. And one of the things we promised is after the 3.5 days, we'd let you go through the entire 3.5 days. If you came to us and said it was a waste of your time, not only would we give you your money back, but we'd give you $1,000 to cover your travel expenses for wasting your time. In 5 years of doing that, we never had one person take us up on that offer. Now, it was really interesting. We were in Buckhead, Atlanta one time, and a guy comes up at the end of the seminar, and the program was over. And also, by the way, if you're not measuring, we talk about what you don't measure, you can't change. So measure each component of your marketing, your messaging. Each day at the end of the day, and we'll do the same thing here today, we wanted to find out on a scale of 1 to 10, what was the value of what you went through on that day. That way we could identify if anybody was in trouble, they weren't getting it. So if somebody came back and said it was a 6, we know there was something wrong. So we would meet with them and say, hey, did you not get it? And find out where their head was at. At the end of the 3 days, there was a gentleman who we saw in the back of the room first day was sitting like this. Wouldn't move, wouldn't talk, wouldn't take notes. Second day, he'd do this. Third day, he started to open up. At the end of the 3rd day, he came up to us, and there was like 4 or 5 people in line. I could just see him standing in line waiting to talk to me. And he got to me, and I came up and I said, hi, Jim. I said, how much money do I owe you? And he goes, what? I said, how much money do I owe you? And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, obviously you didn't get as much out of the program as you could have, so I'm assuming that you want a refund. And I could have quelled it on the first day, but I thought I'd play with him a little bit. It turns out he was an attorney. And he said, Scott, you're really willing to give me my money back? And I said, yeah, we'll give you your money back. I said, I'll give it to you right now. And he said, that's interesting because I came here for one reason, to find out if you'd live up to your guarantee. And I said, well, that's unfortunate because you missed a great seminar. I said, tell you what, why don't you go to the back of the room? At the time we had a $995 home study course. I said, go tell my wife that I said to give you as a gift that $995 seminar or home study course so you can make up for all the information that you missed while you were checked out. And I did it in a very polite way. But it's just like Dallas came home the other day and she goes, guess what? Whole Foods now has a new policy. Bring it back. No receipt, doesn't matter. So they're following the Costco's, they're following the Nordstroms, they're following the companies who realize this, that say, don't worry about the one person who's going to take advantage of you. Give as much value and take the risk away from them. Next, remind your customers what you're doing for them. It's very important that, they don't always get it. So when you do something for them, take notes, send it to them, say, here's what's happened lately. So make sure you constantly remind your customers. I already talked about the cake. Think like a chess player, move 3 moves ahead. Let's say you go to your doctor. Your doctor says you have a terminal issue with your body. You have disease in your body, and if you don't change, you'll die. Show of hands, how many in here would change their lifestyle? Show of hands. Would you? Mutual of Omaha did a survey with 333 patients. And they said, listen, either you change your lifestyle or you're going to perish, or you're going to be required quadruple bypass surgery, some life-altering surgery. And they told those 333 people that they were going to perish. A year later, after they told them that, how many do you think changed their lifestyle as a result of having that information? How many think did it?
30.
Yeah, 7%. 93% stayed in their same lifestyle, even though it was a life or death situation. So what I can tell you is this: immersion experiences, or just wanting it or having strong willpower, doesn't get the job done. Because even though you learn some great things about your business, what I love about Sage is that you're doing it repetition, you're doing it over time. You're not just going to one event and saying, hey, I'm fit for life, right? I went to the gym, I got this great body now. It's a repetition, it's conditioning. So what's interesting is what happened with those 333 patients. They turned them over to Dr. Dean Ornish. And this happened in 1993. Dean Ornish put them on a new lifestyle. They actually coached them on a regular basis. They taught them new recipes on how to cook healthy. They gave them yoga and breathing exercises. They actually monitored them and gave them something to do every week to improve their lifestyle. But they held them accountable as well. And what's interesting, at the end of that year, they stopped the program. 2 years after the program had ended, and 3 years after the commencement of the program, they went back and talked to those 333 patients. How many people do you think were still on the program? 78%. Because they had reconditioned new environments, new thinking, new habits, new ways of doing business and health. And that's what we need to do. And that's what I love about what Sage is doing, because this is conditioning and reinforcing, changing your environments, being around people who are educating and you getting answers and solutions. Last slide here. So summary of the proven steps. Number 1, become conscious and start selling strategically, not tactically, not reactively, proactively and strategically. Number 2, become more creative and innovative. Number 3, optimize and compound your growth. Go back and look at your efforts and say, am I focusing all my efforts on getting clients? Or am I focusing all my efforts on working my list to get repeat business? Am I focusing all my efforts on my JVs or distributors? Find out how you can compound those efforts so you can work less and expedite more. Number 4, diagnose before you prescribe. Number 5, master effective communications. Number 6, use a proven hiring process. Number 7, and the one we find is the biggest challenge, just like we said, that repetition of ongoing, is make sure you have ongoing and effective training in your organization. Because I can tell you, sending them, bringing them in once a quarter or once a year and putting them through a rah-rah event or taking them to Vegas, it's fun and it may change the culture a little bit, but it has very little staying power. You have about a 7% retention. But if you do what you're doing here, if you have an ongoing training program, reinforcement, and integration of the materials, role play, etc., you'll have a much better result. I'm going to give you one last bonus. Appreciate and prosper. What I mean by that is this. Here's what I do know. What you appreciate will appreciate. What you don't appreciate will depreciate. How important is appreciation for an employee? If they don't feel appreciated, what are they going to do?
Find it someplace else.
Yeah, and it's not just work. Will a child smoke cigarettes to be appreciated by their friends? Yeah, will they do drugs? Will they take a gun and put it to somebody's head and pull the trigger? In 1993, I was asked to go down to East LA Juvenile Justice Center and work with a couple of people I brought in, Joseph McClennan, a guy named Dwayne Dog Chapman, the bounty hunter. I brought in Dwayne Chapman and a couple others, and we went in because a judge invited us in to work with these kids. These kids were all at-risk youth, but we did a tour of the facility. He said, Scott, there's 820 kids in lockup here. Their ages 9 to 17 years old. They haven't shaved for the first time. They haven't graduated from high school. And they're locked up for what we call here in California Statute 187. What's that stand for? It's murder. What were you doing at 9 or 10 years old? These kids are in for murder. And I said, you got to be kidding me. They're walking around with their hands intertwined behind their back for two reasons. Number one, they can't flash gang signals. Number two, it takes them that much longer to unclasp their hands to get in a fight, and the guards have that much more time to react. They're in lockdown. 9, 10, 12, 14 years old. And I said, how does this happen? He goes, well, 50 years ago, it wasn't a big deal. Like the worst crime in here was like larceny or auto theft. He goes, but 50 years ago, there were parents. There were, someone there to guide them. Eventually, the parents, especially in low-income neighborhoods, were either on drugs, they were, not home, they just left, or they themselves were locked up. But at least their grandparents were still there 25 years ago. He said today, there's nobody there for them. The parents are gone, the grandparents are gone. So when they get home from school, if they even go to school, they go down to the street corner and hang out with a family called a what? A gang. And to be appreciated, they go out hunting other human beings. That's how strong the need for appreciation is. So we talk about corporate culture. I can tell you that the way to make sure that you give fuel to your business plan, to your business model, to your sales systems, to your structure, is to make sure people feel appreciated. See, if you don't appreciate your spouse, someone else will. If you don't appreciate your body, no one else will. Now I'm kind of playful and kind of kidding, but isn't that true? If you just make your decisions through, am I appreciating or depreciating? Dallas and I have a little game we play. We wake up in the morning, and by the time we go to bed, we have to find 10 ways to appreciate each other. So you're constantly thinking about it. You're focused on ways to appreciate, not depreciate. In most relationships, what do? We see the challenges in the relationship and we focus on them. We didn't notice it in the first 3 months. You mean you didn't put down the toilet seat again? Didn't matter in the first 3 months, right? We were all enamored, we didn't see it. But after a while, we fall into that trap. So just remember, what you appreciate will appreciate, what you don't appreciate will depreciate. So appreciate where you are and prosper. Last story and then we'll call it a night. Little boy has disease in his body because he continues to put sugar in his system. He's eating sugar all the time. He's eating candy, and his parents he lived in India. And his parents came to him and said, listen, you got to quit this. You're sick. And they took him to the doctor, and the doctor says, listen, if he doesn't quit eating candy, you got to take him off sugar. It's killing him. And he said, what can we do to get you to quit? And he says, if you can get Gandhi to ask me to quit sugar, eating sugar, I'll do it. And they go, are you kidding me, Gandhi? Now I'm paraphrasing the story, but long story short, they take they take 30 days to save up money to go see Gandhi. They take a day and a half journey to walk to see Gandhi. They finally get an audience with Gandhi. And Gandhi comes and says, how may I help you, madam? He says, my son's eating sugar. The doctor says if he doesn't quit eating candy and sugar, it's going to kill him. And he goes, well, what would you like from me? She goes, well, he said that if you'll quit eating sugar, if you'll ask him to quit eating sugar, he'll stop. And he goes, okay, great. Come back in 30 days. She goes, what? He goes, madam, come back in 30 days. So she takes the day and a half journey home, saves up another 30 days, takes a day and a half journey back, finally gets an audience with Gandhi and says, we were here 30 days ago. Remember I said to my son, I said to you that my son was eating sugar and candy, and the doctor said he's going to die if he doesn't quit. And Gandhi kneels down on one knee and looks him in the eye and says, son, he goes, if I ask you to stop eating sugar, will you quit? Will you stop eating candy? And he goes, absolutely. So he looks him in his hand, he puts his hand on his shoulder and he says, I'm asking you, no, I'm begging you to stop eating sugar. Will you do so? And he said, yes. He goes, great, you can go. So the mother grabs the child's hand, they start to walk away, and she stops, she's dumbfounded. She turns around to Gandhi and says, I don't understand. We were here 30 days ago. Why couldn't you just ask him to stop eating sugar then? He goes, because, madam, 30 days ago, I was still eating sugar. That's where the frame came, be the change you want to see in the world. Here's what I do know. In times of change, the learners will inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to live in a world that no longer exists. That's why I'm excited while you're here, being part of that group who's learning. So I had 2 goals for being here. First was to create some value. How many got some value out of tonight? How many also had a little bit of fun? Okay, would you be willing to do me a favor in return? Okay, the ladies over there, my wife Dallas on the left, the brunette, and Sasha, who's also one of our consultants in our team, have a survey. And we'd just like to very quickly check off, what was the favorite subject, what subject would you like more information on a scale of 1 to 10, how much value. And at the bottom, if you'd like, and I didn't get a chance to, I went through them pretty quick, but if you'd like a copy of the slides, just check off the bottom, I'd like a copy of the slides. Also, we do something called a diagnostic call. And if you'd like to request a free 2-hour diagnostic call with the leader of your organization, good timing. We'll do that for you. So just check that off and request that, and we will offer that as well. And if there's for any other reason you want to speak to us for anything else, just check off that box as well. But thank you so much for having us in. Jerry, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you very much.